Hey, everybody. I'm Money Mike.
And I'm Rad Bill. And
Hey, Rad Bill.
hey, Money Mike.
Sell me this pen.
Okay. Yeah, totally. This hypothetical pen I'm holding will make your dick bigger.
Really?
Yes, inch by inch, in fact.
Oh, man. One more inch, I'll be at 2.
I'm saying. Well, I'm going to hold on to the pen for a little while, create a little bit of short supply here, I guess. There's only one pen, unfortunately.
Oh, well. I'm going to have to give my life savings for that pen.
I know, right? Pen sold, baby. So, hey, everyone. Today we are talking about Jordan Belfort. We're going to put him through our PR torture test and see if that bitch comes out on crutches. Crutches, for the uninitiated, is an acronym that we're going to be using throughout the podcast just to help gauge exactly how many mishaps the subject has run into. So the C is child labor allegations. The R is rich parents. The U is union suppression and employee abuse. T is tax avoidance, often disguised as charity. The C is consumer harm. That's the second C. The H is harassment allegations. The E is egregious behavior after hours, meaning are they a piece of shit in their personal life? And then the S is slap suits and journalist suppression.
And as a framework for this conversation, we're really going to follow the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. For those who haven't seen it, it creates a good pace for the bulk of this story, giving a little bit more insight into Jordan Belfort's early life. But, one of my big criticisms of this movie is it really tries to describe Jordan Belfort's crimes as victimless. We never meet the people affected by what he did. What we're going to do in our story is try to give a voice to the potentially thousands of bodies that Jordan Belfort left in his wake and just provide more of a holistic context to what he did and how it was harmful for so many people. Rad Bill, if you want to go ahead, I think we can get started.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll do my best to keep the pacing of the movie just so that we can keep people engaged and listening. We don't want too many people to tune us out here. We don't have that many listeners as it is. But so we're going to start with his early life, pre-Wolf of Wall Street. So Jordan got his start in Queens in a middle-class family as a little sales guy. One summer, he and a friend sold ices for 2 months and brought in like $20,000. He attributes this and a few other door-to-door tricks as kind of starting him on his quote-unquote entrepreneurial journey. He used this money to pay for school, which...
Damn. Yeah, those were the fucking days. I wish I could work for a summer and go to school.
Jesus. Yeah, I'm going to work for 2 months one summer when I'm a kid, and that's going to put me through fucking college.
Those were crazy, man.
Yeah, man. So he got a bachelor's in biology with the intention of being a dentist, but dropped out of dental school on like the first day after hearing the dean of the school say that the field's heyday had come and gone, which is factually incorrect. But fair bet.
Where's that dean now? We don't have any data there, but he was fucking
found
wrong.
Any data on the dean? Is he dead? Is he rich? Did he go into dentistry?
Was he trying to just get competition out of the fucking industry?
Maybe that was it. Maybe he was just trying to kind of cull the field a little bit so that he had less competition.
There's too many dentists, and I'm not that good at this, but I want to keep making $1 million a year.
Yeah. And working fucking 3 days a week. Yeah. Hard to fucking beat.
Bullshit.
Jesus. The drug habits you could do on that, my God. And you get a prescription pad.
Anyway.
Yeah. So Jordan leaves the School of Dentistry, starts a door-to-door meat selling business with a friend. He and the friend have a falling out, which you'll notice is a recurring trend here. And he goes out on his own. Short while later, he has a team of several workers capable of moving more than 2 tons of product each week. By age 25, Jordan bought himself a Porsche, a nice red one. Stopped paying the invoices, and unsurprisingly, the business fails. Jordan files for bankruptcy, and that Porsche gets towed away.
Yeah, this is, again, a recurring theme that we see. Jordan Belfort makes some money, instantly tries to live beyond his means, fucks over a bunch of people, and the business goes belly up. So even early on, we are seeing this trend of, I want to be perceived as rich, I want to have these nice things, and I really don't fucking care what happens to anybody else.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with his friend on that icy business, but I don't know if he also went to school for biology. I don't know if he got enough money to pay tuition. I don't know what tuition costed back then, but The writing was on the wall from a very fucking early age. So he watches the Porsche get towed away and decides it's stockbroker in time. He goes in and is immediately smitten by Wall Street and the potential it held. Also, there was a movie out at this point, and some of our very few listeners might be ahead of me, but the movie was called Wall Street. It starred Charlie Sheen, Michael,
Keaton?
Who? It's
no, Michael fucking Douglas, dude.
Michael Douglas. Yep, Catherine
God.
Zeta-Jones is
Do
fucking
we even watch
husband.
movies? Jesus
Do
Christ.
we even fucking watch movies? Yeah. Jordan had a great big hard-on for Gordon Gekko and wanted to be just like him, which is
not a great thing.
Yeah. He adopted the movie mantra, greed is good. First enters the securities business when he's 24. He interviews at LF Rothschild. During his interview, he pitches a random stock to the interviewer, guaranteeing that it was going to go up, which is illegal.
Super fucking illegal. Like, you can't do that. We cannot understate how not okay that is.
Yeah, some of our sources claim that the interviewer actually expressed that it was illegal. According to Jordan, the interviewer said, "You're either going to wind up being the most successful broker on Wall Street, or you're going to wind up in jail." So, just as an aside, by the way, Jordan did wind up going to jail, but was kind of a fucking nobody on Wall Street. No one knew this fucking guy until he got busted. So he started the way so many started. He was a connector for 6 months, where he procured prospects and passed the phone to a broker. He's bullied and talked down, same as everybody else. And then he finally gets his trader's license. In the movie, they portray this meeting with Matthew McConaughey, who's playing Mark Hanna, who's a real person whose name was not changed either. And that bitch also went to jail for fraud.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So much fraud.
Jesus. So before he could start trading, Black Friday wiped out LF Rothschild. So
yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that in the movie it portrays it as like the first day he was on the floor.
I don't think that was right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite the first day, but it was very immediately. So, maybe the cosmic powers were like, get this motherfucker out of the securities business and tank the whole market.
At all costs. Yeah. So Jordan Belfort's back on the couch. He finds out about a company called Investor Center, which was founded on duping pensioners into buying penny stocks. Most of the people here were selling, a few $100s of stocks here and there, but the commissions were pretty significant. It was like 50% for the pink sheets. But he makes $38,000 his first month, $70,000 the following month, and his first year doing this, he made like $500,000. In the movie, there's this stupid diner scene that's not real. He and Danny met through a friend of Jordan's then wife, and they start Stratton Oakmont out of an abandoned garage.
But what was true, and sorry to cut you off, is there's a piece where Jordan asks Danny if he married his cousin, and that is super fucking true.
That's real. Yeah.
Yeah, Danny married his cousin.
And then cheated on her so much.
Honestly, like, if you cheat on your cousin, is that better for the evolutionary, prospects because you're reducing the chances of birth defects?
Maybe, if he had babies with any of those prostitutes, but I don't know that he did. I don't know that he knows whether or not he did.
Yeah, I don't know either, but that's a moral quandary right there. You're cheating on your wife, but you are reducing the interconnectivity of the gene pool.
That's right. The tree is growing branches that don't eventually reconnect. Anyway, poetry in motion. No, you're good. So it's in this garage that Jordan gets the aha moment. Rather than just reaching out to pensioners like he's been doing at Investor Center, they're going to reach out to business owners and people who can invest hundreds of thousands of dollars. So he gets a band of childhood friends and brings them on as traders. Important note here. This whole thing is based on him fucking lying to people.
Yeah.
And another important quick note here, along with all those rich clients he's supposedly targeting, he's still fucking over a ton of working class folks here.
Oh, yeah.
Where the supposed rich business owner has $20 million, taking $100,000 from that person is still a bummer. He cites this over and over in his interviews, where he's still trying to lean on this sort of inconsequential angle. Oh, what's a few $100,000 to a multimillionaire? there were plenty of accounts of people who were worth, let's say, $300,000 losing $250,000.
Yeah. And again, this is really downplayed in the pop culture zeitgeist surrounding Jordan Belfort. And not to give too much of a peek behind the curtain here, but I think all said and done, he fucked over like 1,500 or so people just to get rich. You know, there's that scene in the movie where like you hear the person on the other end of the line going, you know, like, oh, I could pay off my mortgage with that.
Yeah, these are middle class goals that these people are trying to reach.
Real people have. I have those goals. I would like to not work someday.
I'd like to not work tomorrow.
Actually, I worked today and it was bullshit.
Yeah. So anyways, we joked about the pen that makes your dick bigger. But he's selling these pens by telling people they're made of gold.
Yeah.
That's his fucking trick here. And no one else is allowed to do that, which gives him the edge. The other thing he's doing is most of the people that he's calling are out of state, which is atypical for the dial-in for dollars, phone jamming hustler of the day on Wall Street. They're calling people in state. These people have never talked to a Wall Street broker.
Yeah. And he's also not on Wall Street.
We're going to emphasize and re-emphasize that again and again and again. This guy is not on fucking Wall Street.
He was the only person that ever referred to himself as the Wolf, and he wasn't on Wall Street. It was just bullshit all up and down.
Yeah. Initially, him and his dozen buddies actually struggle for a few months. You know, it's going just okay. And then Jordan invents what he calls the straight line persuasion system, which is sometimes referred to in our sources as the Kodak pitch, which again, is literally just a guide anticipating responses and directing lies.
Yeah.
For the broker to pitch to these people to get them to buy, to keep them on the phone, whatever else. And this was really the key to his success. The working hard part is bullshit. He's reeling them in by selling them on blue chips. And then he goes straight to the pink sheets. See the fucking movie.
Yeah.
He's maintained that he hates that his clients lost money and that he didn't intend for that to happen. But the bullshit starts here. And we'll go into more of the schemes in detail.
Yeah.
But it becomes very, very obvious that the whole design here is fast profit regardless of the consequences.
Yeah, and it's been bullshit all along. Like there was never a time where Jordan Belfort was on not Wall Street not spewing nonsense. I mean, he spewed nonsense in his first interview, and it just continued from there on out.
It could have started at the icy stand.
This icy will make your dick bigger.
Yeah, right. Would you like to buy a golden icy?
Anyway, back to our story.
Yeah. So after a year, obviously they pick up a lot of steam with this new inventive approach of spewing bullshit. And they moved to 1979 Marcus Avenue, which is not an abandoned garage. It's a large new office building. They are still in Long Island.
It's still not on Wall Street or even in fucking Manhattan.
Not even close. But yeah,
no,
so
not even the same fucking zip code.
Yeah. So he quickly grew his operation to 1,000 people, largely uneducated folks that if he were in Manhattan, this would not have scaled this way. They hired everyone they could. In one case, a deli worker noticed a broker's Rolex, asked him what he did and how much he made, and the broker told him to come to the office the next day at 7 a.m. He started at Stratton Oakmont that way. When Stratton Oakmont finally went down, investigators actually found that many of the brokers had hired people to take the Series 7 in their name. Most of them, or many of them, were not even licensed properly to pitch stocks at all.
And I'm just going to go ahead and say, the Series 7 isn't a very hard test. I took it. It is not hard. If you can't pass a Series 7, you should not be talking about anything related to securities.
Really, truly. Yeah, it's really something. And this is where we begin to dip into the culture stuff, everything you see in the office space, the debauchery that you see in the movie. The women who worked in this office space really dealt with a shitload of misogyny. It was a misogynistic hellscape for them. You know, men shouted obscenities at them constantly, and at the parties, they were free game for the male colleagues. Belfort is quoted in his book as describing the women that he employed as rutting away under the clear blue sky like barnyard animals, happy to put on a show.
And what's so gross about this part of this story is this is what gets the first year finance dudes so excited. I want to be like Jordan Belfort because he had this like frat house of an office.
Yeah, people in college today are looking at this and wanting this in their career now.
Yeah, and yuck.
Yeah, so now we're settling into the day-to-day. So shop opens up. Belfort starts the day with a speech to his brokers, basically promising them all that they're going to get rich. As a side note, there's not a cult effect here. He's promising deli workers that they're going to make millions of dollars and get to be fucked up all the time.
He's making the same promises he's making to his clients to his employees. It's the same thing. He's selling them the same dick enlarging pen.
Yeah, that's right. So, we're going to do our best to not glamorize the drugs and fucking. So I'll just leave it at there was a ton of drugs and a ton of fucking. The elevator blowjob scene in the movie was real. But what they don't mention in the movie is that the girl in the elevator was 17 years old.
Jesus.
In his book, Jordan claims that he and Danny Porsche had a threesome with the 17-year-old at one point. Danny denies this, and this wasn't written down, but in the interview where they talked about this, Danny's like, no, I'd never fucking do that. I've had a ton of threesomes, but I would never have a fucking threesome with a guy. Dude. Also, yuck, she was 17.
I love how the controversy here was not, hey man, you had sex with an underage girl. It was, no man, I would totally have sex with an underage girl, but with another dude in the room. What am I, gay? Like,
yeah, I'm not fucking gay or nothing.
Dude, fucking yuck. And also, again, point of controversy, Jordan claims that he had a threesome with a 17-year-old. That's not something that you tell people. Like,
that's in his fucking book.
Yeah, he's like, hey man, I was such a cool bro dude, just being a cool bro dude with my bros, that we fucked a 17-year-old. And Danny was like, nah, man.
I fucked the 17-year-old.
Yeah,
alone.
It was just
not that
me.
She was 17 or nothing.
Anyway.
Yeah, so Jordan's always fucked up. The movie shows this. It's valid. It's fucked up talking to lawyers, fucked up talking to clients, employees, everybody. He's fucked up all the goddamn time.
I'm going to butt in a little bit here because the way that the drug abuse is addressed is pedantic and victimless, like all of his other crimes. Oh, Leonardo DiCaprio stumbling out of a Lamborghini. That scene is designed to get laughs out of the audience. Like, ha, he was so fucked up on Quaaludes. But that particular scene, it wasn't a Lamborghini, it was a Mercedes that, he woke up and realized that he crashed. And in the movie, he's crashing into golf carts and, all of these inanimate objects. But in reality, he crashed into another vehicle that had a person in it, and that woman went to the hospital.
Yeah, it was a head-on collision.
Yeah, somebody could have died because he had this drug problem. So it wasn't funny. It wasn't pedantic. People got hurt.
Yep, there were victims to every one of his crimes. But,
exactly.
Jordan claims that part of the reason for his extravagant lifestyle was to keep his employees overspending, so they had to work their asses off continually. And it worked. The interviews that we've read and listened to from former Stratton Oakmont employees sort of explained that everyone working there was making a ton of money and constantly struggling. But yeah, so back to Jordan's home life. Somewhere in here, Jordan meets Nadine at a party. Someone pulls their dick out, and contrary to the movie, Nadine immediately asks to leave. She's freaked out, and her boyfriend takes her home. Jordan decided he had to meet Nadine and reached out to a mutual friend and promised to make her $15,000 on the stock market if she would convince Nadine to meet him on a date. The friend, not surprisingly, blew the hell up out of Nadine's phone and got her to come out, later mentioning that Jordan was going to be there.
Jesus.
The Duchess was confused. They met at Mezzaluna in Manhattan. After the date, he drove her home, and she refused to give him her number. The next day, she came home to 1 million flowers that scene from the movie is real. He relentlessly called her, just calling and calling and calling, which led to her, understandably, getting pretty confused about his marital status. She went into this thing thinking that he was married, but he tells her he's separated from his wife. He's living in an apartment in the city, which he did have, and the relationship built from there.
I think that this is a good place to add. Nadine has her own TikTok. She's actually become a therapist who specializes in surviving abusive relationships. And she describes this particular instance as textbook love bombing. It wasn't romantic. It was about control.
Yeah, with a gesture this grand, how can I possibly say no?
Yeah.
So yeah, now I feel like it's probably a good time to get into the pump and dump stuff. So this was actually an upgrade from the original pitching penny stocks to pensioners and to rich people thing. And this starts because in 1991, true to the movie, Forbes posts an article that just tears Jordan Belfort to pieces. Claims that Jordan's only ambition was to get rich. Claims he was screwing pensioners, which is valid. It did not call him the Wolf of Wall Street. He actually gave himself that name.
Yeah. Dude, I just love that detail. Like, have you ever met a person who's like, yeah, man, my name's Richard, but like all my friends call me Duke. And then like you look at his group of friends and they're like, we don't call him
that. I had a
That's
friend.
Weird, actually.
He wasn't a friend. I knew a kid from my hometown who changed his name on Facebook to his name and then in parentheses, the Wolf of Greensboro, which is just so freaking brutally cringeworthy. But Jordan Belfort is no better than him.
Oh, no.
They're on the same level.
Dude, are Greensboro and Long Island like the same? Oh, that's yucky.
Oh, man. Yeah. So needing a pivot, needing to change the story a little bit, Jordan starts digging into his signature pump and dump scheme. You know, again, the whole thing of him feeling bad for losing people's money. He was quoted saying to his brokers, let's get on the phone. Let's put lipstick on this pig. So this all happens fast, by the way. The whole pump and dump thing, it's a few short years. But he meets Steve Madden. He apparently knew Steve as well, so it wasn't just through Danny Porish. But he meets Steve Madden, talks through the plan. He stakes $500,000 in Steve Madden footwear. His goal was to own 50% of the company's capital. So he sets up front companies. We'll talk about this scheme particularly in more detail, just to walk you through how it works. But he sets up front companies run by friends to escape the attention of the SEC. And on launch day, Stratton Oakmont buys the shares from the shell companies that Jordan set up for $5 per share, which is a massive premium. The momentum creates a buying frenzy and inflates the stock's value to $18 very, very quickly. And in 10 minutes, Jordan's made $20 million. So Stratton Oakmont did this shit 34 times. He pumped and dumped most of these as well, but it's not a very complicated trick. It's important to note.
That is a really important note. You know, it's not a complicated trick. He wasn't a genius. And B, not again to give too much of a peek behind the curtain, but he got fucking caught. You know, it is super easy to be a criminal who gets caught. Like, I can rob a bank if the end goal is go to jail. It's very easy to be a bank robber then.
Yeah, I mean, he does the Steve Madden thing. In just a few years, he's busted. But yeah, let's break this thing down to a bit more of a granular level.
Yeah.
Just to walk you through how it works. We found an article that broke into 5 very easy to understand steps. It's in the Wall Street Journal. It'll be in our sources.
So step 1 is to create a stock to IPO or to take public. And what was required here wasn't even an actual business, but just a business entity with a story that could be transformed into a publicly traded stock. In fact, a lot of these businesses that Stratton IPO'd were just empty storefronts. Step 2 was to line up your victims. So Stratton brokers would first gain investors' confidence by letting them make a small profit off 1 or 2 Stratton IPOs. And then once trust had been established, the Stratton salesman would just inform the customers of a new hot IPO with a low issue price and wait for them to take the bait. And step 3 is bait and switch. And the key here is to create demand through market orders that Stratton could control. So shortly before the IPO, the Stratton broker would call these customers and say, hey, we don't have enough shares allocated, so we can't get you that many shares at the IPO price, but you should definitely put in a market order to execute as soon as this new stock hits the market. And important note about market orders, they execute at whatever the market price is at the time that the order is placed. And this leads us to step 4, which is market manipulation. Once Stratton Oakmont had an inside scoop into the market orders and volume, because they were the one holding all of the orders, they would create rising laddered limit orders to take advantage of the artificial demand and cause a very sharp rise in price. So minutes after the stock hits the market, it would explode. Now, the important part here that they've made the price rise is they have to keep it there. Now, if Stratton Oakmont had dumped all of their shares as soon as the market peaked, this would be within hours of the initial IPO, it would have been obvious to regulators exactly what they were doing. So now the game was to convince their clients to either hold or buy more. And what really gets sinister here is if they couldn't convince their clients to hold or buy more, and the client put in an order to sell, they would just lose the sell order. If they called to get a hold of their broker to sell, they just wouldn't answer the phone. And so they effectively locked their clients into this stock that they knew was gonna fucking shit the bed. So then, once they felt like enough time had passed, they would get out. They would sell all of their shares. The price of the stock that their clients held, that they sold their clients, would tank, and they would walk away way richer. And an important note here, being a market maker is incredibly lucrative. So Jordan could have gotten crazy rich doing this legitimately, but instead he decided to not only manipulate the market, but also take his clients' money. You know, we keep going back to this, oh, well, we know Jordan Belfort was bad, but he's better now. One of the victims that lost $250,000 in 1993 claims he has since recovered $8,000.
Yeah. And so the other thing, too, an important note for the person that we're quoting who lost $250,000, he borrowed that money at his broker's suggestion.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And he's 60 years old at this point, and he puts off his retirement for 10 years and just to repay whatever amount that he wound up borrowing. So
yeah, this isn't money in the ether.
Yeah, lots of consumer harm happening here. He's definitely earning one of those C's for sure. It's important to remember as well, you know, someone who's doing this at work doesn't just switch it off when he closes up shop at night and locks the front door. He's going home and doing the same shit to his wife. She's actually recently gone public with her view, which is not well illustrated in the movie, which is not a surprise. She explains how he blew past her boundaries. He coerced her into marriage. If you don't have kids, I'm not going to marry you. If you don't marry me, we can't keep dating. It's all detailed pretty thoroughly in her TikToks, actually.
Dude, it sounds like a hellish existence because he did to her exactly what he did to his employees. He walled her in with an extravagant lifestyle that she couldn't afford by herself, and then used whatever power he had.
What's important to him is that he's winning. Anyways, again, this scheme does not last long. Before long, Johnny Law is knocking on the door. By the way, it took them the few years that it did because Jordan Belfort's a fucking nobody.
He's the fucking Fox of Long Island.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, they took notice because of all the prostitutes, not because Jordan was big time. So the SEC shacks up in his office. They show this in the movie. They explain, they bugged the office. They cut off the heat, and that's real. They really did that. Through this process, they skirt by the SEC. There's one left standing sort of at the FBI, our hero Greg Coleman, who's portrayed in the movie pretty well, I think. The yacht scene was not real, but he swore he was going to take down Jordan Belfort. He had, unsurprisingly, had a hard time investigating throughout this whole process, because none of Jordan Belfort's brokers are cooperating. Keep in mind, they're making millions of dollars. There's not much of a motive for them to cooperate.
Yeah, this is self-preservation, not a cult of personality.
That's exactly right. Yeah, a ton of our sources reference Jordan Belfort's charisma here. He's paying these people millions of dollars. You don't need any sort of charisma for that. As an example, actually, Chester Ming in the movie was a stand-in for Victor Wong, who was a real associate of Jordan Belfort's. Belfort didn't trust him because he was very adamant and open about his ambition to start his own firm, and he eventually spun off as intended and started a firm in Manhattan that had a ton of success poaching brokers from Belfort. And his firm was generally considered to be preferable to Belfort's, because it was in Manhattan.
Dude, is Chester Ming the real Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, Victor Wong, you mean? And yes, he is.
Oh, Victor Wong, yes.
Victor Wong is an actual wolf of the real Wall Street. That's
That's funny.
In interviews, Belfort claims that he had to sabotage Victor's firm. Who knows if that's actually real? The main takeaway here is that Belfort didn't have the cult following he likes to pretend he did. So 1994, a year after Madden, the SEC finds conclusive evidence of fraud. Jordan Belfort steps down, loses his license, pays a $2 million fine. The whole "I'm fucking staying" scene in the movie is fake. He stepped right down, sort of passively, promised to keep things running from behind the scenes, which maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he stepped down and he arranged for the company to pay him a $1 million monthly salary, which is good. At this point, you're fucking set, right? You're making $12 million a year in 1994 money. Just chill out and take the freaking dividends.
Yeah. And the movie really loves to emphasize this fact. They kind of put that as a line in the sand where, had Jordan just stopped there, he might have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for that meddling FBI. But we should be happy that Jordan went to jail because he defrauded 1,500 people out of their life savings.
Yeah.
So the whole Icarus story, it's a net positive for the consumer.
Right. Yeah. And what's funny is, okay, so this is where he really fucks up, and also where he earns his T for tax evasion. The $1 million is still going to be taxed. So his next idea is, let's try and skirt those taxes. So he starts sending money to Switzerland. The thing where he taped money to the drug dealer and his wife is real. It was much easier to get through an airport back in the day, even on international flights. But our boy Greg Coleman and the SEC made pals with Switzerland and got proof via a Form A that the Shell Swiss accounts belonged to Belfort and his associates. So smooth sailing through 1998, where he gets caught and charged with fraud and money laundering. This is where he confesses to everything, all of the misbehavior in the early 90s. He pled guilty to all the stock shit and immediately sold all of his buddies to the FBI and the SEC.
Yeah, like there's that scene in the movie where he's passing Danny that note saying like, "Oh, I'm wired. Don't say anything. I don't want you to get in trouble." No, he flipped on everybody.
Every time,
instantly.
Yeah, every time it's brought up in an interview where they say, "And then you sold out your buddies," he goes, "Yeah, but I passed that note. I passed that note. It wasn't to Danny, but it was to someone. I passed that note to someone." So his life starts falling apart. His wife gets wise to everything going on. According to her, this is when she realized that the money that he had earned up to this point was blood money. And she says that she's going to leave him. At this point, he pushes her down the stairs, takes their 3-year-old and puts him in the passenger seat unbuckled, and crashes into a pillar at their house.
Yeah. It's funny when you think about that, because that scene is in the movie and it is harrowing. The pushing down the stairs isn't in there, but he definitely does punch Nadine in the stomach.
Yeah, he gives her a good gut punch there.
Yeah, and crashes the car. And again, it's crazy talking to people about this movie because it's like people forgot that fucking happened.
Or they try and minimize it. Yeah, you'd be angry too. She's saying that she's going to leave him.
Yeah, exactly. You would also be a domestic abuser if you were in Jordan Belfort's situation. It's like, no, I'm not a piece of fucking garbage.
I'm sure that's why, too, that they downgraded the push down the stairs to a punch in the stomach, is to minimize his behavior in that scene so that he doesn't lose the audience.
Well, and I don't want to speculate too much about Scorsese's intentions here because I have not read any of his commentary on the movie. But part of me wants to believe, because I do like Scorsese's movies, that he really tried to make that scene visceral to get his audience's attention of kind of where this life led Jordan Belfort. But he really just overestimated the character of the American people. And we're totally cool with domestic abuse. Just make a lot of money.
Yeah, he crushed a Countach. That was rock and roll.
Yeah, man. He's a piece of garbage.
He's a piece
I keep
of shit.
saying that.
Yeah.
I keep saying that, but I can't find a better synonym. This is human excrement.
Yeah.
Incarnate.
So ordinarily he'd be serving 20 years in prison. Because he ratted out all of his friends, because he came clean about everything, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And our boy Greg Coleman went in and literally confiscated every dollar he could find, which is just desserts for Jordan. It's sad for Nadine in some respects because that means she's left with nothing, but it seems like she's come out of the whole affair okay, which is good.
Yeah.
So he's sentenced to the 4 years. He's required to pay $110 million. The way that they arrange this is he's required to pay 50% of his gross earnings until the amount's repaid. He wound up, I guess, through good behavior, only serving 22 months of his sentence. And he was rooming with Tommy Chong in jail, which is an actual celebrity.
Speaking of celebrities, doesn't Jordan Belfort refer to Leonardo DiCaprio in like a super buddy way? Like in interviews, he's like, "Oh yeah, me and Leo were just hanging out." It's like, if Leonardo DiCaprio has any just amount of character within him, he hates you as much as I do. In fact, maybe more.
He's hanging out with Martin Scorsese. He's not hanging out with Jordan's shit ass. So anyway, he's in jail. He tells the stories to Tommy Chong, who tells him he should write a book, and he decides to take him up on that. The book's got all these little exclamation marks. Jordan is very open about the fact that he tried to model the book off of Hunter S. Thompson's writing, which, fine. In 2006, he's released from prison. He publishes his autobiography on September 25th of 2007, and it's immediately a top seller. In his book, he claims he was a victim of capitalism, which is ridiculous. He was blinded by the easy money. He was just too young and impressionable. As a note, the only money he's paid back was from the initial sale of his assets, the stuff that Greg Coleman was able to seize. In 2010, he paid nothing. And in 2011, he paid just $21,000 towards this amount, despite having received close to $1 million from the sale of his book rights.
Which is just so... I mean, funny is the wrong word. But again, in all of these interviews, he's like, "Oh, I didn't want my clients to get hurt.
I hate that my clients lost money. Oh,
yeah, I am such a victim here.
I pay for this every day."
Yeah, you could have paid for it. Yeah. You could have paid. You got money. And if you really gave a shit about your clients, you would have at least used some of that $1 million to help make them whole.
Not only that, the production company behind the movie was accused of fraud, and he tried to sue them for the rights of his book back because he claimed that it was sullying the reputation, and he didn't know that there'd be criminality behind the production of the film.
You guys made me look like a criminal, and I want the book about me being a criminal back.
I want to make sure that people who commit crimes receive their just desserts. They don't deserve the rights to my book. So anyways, Australia's going to start coming up here a lot. There's good reason for that. We don't have good record on how many copies of the book have sold since 2011, but he's sold at least 200,000 copies in Australia, according to that source, and that's an older source. Shortly after this, ironically enough, he starts his motivational speaking career talking about the keys to motivation and the importance of business ethics, which didn't hold. It didn't take, unsurprisingly, and he wound up moving to his straight line persuasion system, the one that's full of lies and bullshit, and creative sales techniques.
Creative. Dude, I fucking love that. I use creative sales techniques. It's not creative, Jordan. It's lying.
Yeah. And, time and time again, we see this. Bitcoin was one. He comes out against Bitcoin. He says it's stupid. 2 years later, he's all in on Bitcoin.
Let's talk about crypto.
Yeah.
Let's take a second and talk about Jordan Belfort, cryptocurrency, and the similarities between cryptocurrency right this very second and penny stocks in the 90s. So I'm actually going to take a second here and go to Jordan Belfort's website, because some of the stuff is just so yucky that you have to get it from the source. So Jordan Belfort in his JB Online, it brings you to this, the real Wolf of Wall Street. He is a investment guru, the world's #1 sales trainer, entrepreneurship expert. There's a guide in here. It's like your guide to NFTs, how to make money in crypto. And like I said earlier, cryptocurrency is a lightly regulated, small float environment. What does that sound like? That sounds like penny stocks in the fucking 90s.
It sounds like a pump and dump.
Yeah, celebrities have already gotten in trouble for pumping and dumping cryptocurrency. So is it any surprise to anybody at all that Jordan Belfort is interested in this? Fucking no.
No.
He's up to the same bullshit that he was up to, however many years ago.
Yeah, I think from the interviews and from our sources, the one thing that we can ascertain, if it's true, is that Jordan Belfort decided to stop doing drugs. He's 17 years sober.
Yes. He
Otherwise,
is.
the pump and dump thing lives. He lives in a nice beach house in California with, I think he's on his, at this point, 4th pretty blonde wife. And it's the same story over and over again. He's the pump and dump king, and he's going to keep doing this until he goes to jail for the rest of his life, which, hopefully comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And, the only other thing that I think that we need to talk about relates, to the movie and really just to the zeitgeist around Jordan Belfort. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. So, I've already kind of commented that this movie came out, and the takeaway from everybody that I've talked to is, oh my goodness, they loved it. Every first-year college finance kid is telling people to sell them this pen. If it was meant to be a cautionary tale, that is not how we're taking it. And I feel like it really encourages harmful behavior in a industry that is built on trust.
I think you're spot on. I've read some of what Scorsese has said about the movie, and, he's pretty steeped in his Catholicism, and a lot of his stories center around the bad guy and asking, what can we or can't we forgive? But it totally didn't take. Everyone missed the references. Yeah. Everyone missed the intention of the movie. This is wealth porn at its finest.
Ooh, well said. That's precisely what it is. If I was going to give Martin Scorsese notes, I might say, hey, man, maybe you went a little bit overboard with the tits and the drugs and the expensive cars and a little underboard with the wife beating.
Truly, I would agree with that 100%. The other thing that goes counter to the idea of the movie being a matter of, is this forgivable behavior, is how much they embellished it to keep us engaged with the character. How much of his behavior was covered, how many of his victims were hidden or kept out of sight, how much they heavily implied that they were only taking inconsequential sums from very, very rich people. And again, every one of these crimes was perpetrated with the dollars of the rich and the dollars of the ordinary. Yeah. Over and over again.
Even if it's 10% of your wealth, that's still 10% of your wealth. But last thing I want to touch on is all of the data that we have on his income from his books. It's 10 years old. Why can't we find any more current figures? Does he maybe not want people to know how much he makes because then he might be pressured to actually give restitution to the people who deserve it?
Well, what's funny actually is he has an oral agreement with an Australian firm that manages his book, that manages his assets. He keeps it as an oral agreement so that it's hidden from investigators. It's been brought up in a few interviews here and there with him present. This Australian company that hides his wealth says he's not answering any more questions. He doesn't want to touch it. So, yeah.
But he loves to go on these bro podcasts and brag about how he's so good at making money. I saw this one interview where one of these podcasters was like, so if you were like in the middle of Times Square with $5 to your name, how long would it take to be a millionaire? And he's like, I think like a millionaire in a month, 10 million in the first year, or it's just something. If a lifted Ford F-250 was a statement, that was his fucking response. And you're like, okay, man, so you could make money, wherever, however. But again, and I keep harping on this, and I will not fucking stop. The people that you fucked over still don't have their money.
Yeah.
Fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Huge bummer. So quick crutches check. He earns the U for union suppression and employee abuse. There was tons of that.
Yucky workplace environment for sure.
Yeah. Tax avoidance, he gets that T. Consumer harm, we don't have to even cover that.
Don't get me started, man. Let's go for another fucking hour.
Yeah. Harassment allegations, the list is long. And egregious behavior after hours, he absolutely earns. So he earned the heavy hitters, aside from the slap suits. As far as I know, he didn't sue any journalists, but... yeah, real piece of shit. He's coming out with some crutches. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. That's our piece on Jordan Belfort. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's what they say on YouTube videos. I don't know what it is for Spotify.
Yep. And I have been Money Mike.
And I've been Rad Bill.
And
goodbye.